While this is taking place, Brittney Griner comes out and says, I am so sick and tired of the NBA, WNBA. It used to be a peaceful, small little thing. Now there's crowds screaming, hollering. This is disruptive. It's not allowing us to play the game. This is her quote. I don't know if you saw this or not when she gave that.
Patrick Bet-David just dropped what might be the most brutal reality check in podcast history. In response to Brittney Griner's recent comments about Caitlin Clark, comments loaded with racial undertones and thinly veiled resentment, Patrick didn't flinch. While much of the media danced around the issue, he went straight for the jugular, calling out the double standards, the gatekeeping, and the hypocrisy that's been fueling this fire since Caitlin stepped into the league. Griner may have tried to downplay Clark's impact or reframe the narrative, but Patrick reminded everyone exactly why Clark is the most talked about athlete in women's sports today: talent, charisma, and results. This wasn't just a viral moment. It was a mirror held up to a league grappling with change. And not everyone's handling that change with grace. The clip is already making waves, because sometimes it takes an outsider to say what everyone else is too scared to admit.
From 41. What the hell is going on with WNBA that they cannot handle all this attention that they're getting, as well as the hate and anger?
But PBD wasn't having any of it. When Brittney Griner started complaining about Caitlin Clark, fan noise, and so-called respect, Patrick Bet-David lit the internet on fire with one of the most ruthless clapbacks in podcast history. He didn't just push back, he demolished her arguments. He reminded Griner, in no uncertain terms, about her time in a Russian prison, about the global effort, led by American fans and media, that rallied to bring her home. And now she's complaining about fans being too loud? PBD wasn't having it. Then came the second punch. He told her point blank she should be grateful for any attention the WNBA gets, because without players like Caitlin Clark bringing in millions of new eyes, the league wouldn't even be in the headlines, let alone cashing bigger checks. The comeback was cold, sharp, unforgiving, but most of all, it was true. So let's settle the debate. What hit harder? PBD reminding Griner about that Russian prison cell, or him explaining why she should be thanking the very fans she's shading? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you're here for accountability, hit that like button, because this conversation is just getting started.
I'd have fun with you. Brittney Griner, what she says, right there, watch this. Every time we play her, there's this commotion, like this loud rumbling from the stands. Turns out it's people, thousands of them, just sitting there watching.
Let's be brutally honest about what just went down on Patrick Bet-David's podcast. Because Brittney Griner didn't just get challenged, she got hit with a reality check she wasn't ready for. It all started when Griner made one of the most out-of-touch comments in WNBA history. She said the league used to be a peaceful, quiet place. You know, the kind of vibe where you could bring your laptop and get some work done during games. Yes, a professional athlete actually said that. It was a good thing. But that wasn't even the worst part. Griner then veered into dangerous territory, making veiled racial remarks about Caitlin Clark and the attention she's getting. Instead of celebrating new fans and packed arenas, she made it sound like growing the game was somehow a problem. That's when PBD stepped in, and he didn't hold back. He reminded Griner of some very uncomfortable truths, like the fact that the world rallied to get her out of a Russian prison, that people across the political spectrum, including those she's now shading, stood up for her when it mattered most. And now, after everything, she's turning around and complaining that fans are too engaged. PBD hit her with cold, unapologetic facts. No fans, breast, no future, no spotlight, breast, no growth, no Caitlin Clark, no ratings boom. And the truth is, for years, the WNBA begged for attention. Now that it finally has it, some of its biggest names are uncomfortable with the spotlight, not being on them. So here's the real question. Is Griner upset about how the league is growing? Or who's responsible for that growth?
Used to be a chill, quiet place. You could bring your laptop and relax, maybe even get a little work done. But now, it's like there's large gatherings of people watching us from the stands. Some of them are yelling crazy shit about what they're seeing, putting unfair pressure on us to score, like we're there for their entertainment. You are! The whole thing is toxic. I saw a guy with his daughter in the crowd, both of them yelling, couldn't hear what they were saying. Exactly, but it was either my performance or some light racism.
Let's break down what just happened. Because Brittney Griner's comments weren't just tone deaf. They exposed a deeper mindset that's leaving a lot of fans stunned. Griner literally said WNBA games used to be chill and quiet, and now the stands are too loud. She complained about fans yelling, as if that's not exactly what fans are supposed to do. She described the new energy in the arenas as uncomfortable, like there's pressure to perform. Let's be real. Yes, Brittney, there is pressure. Because professional sports are entertainment. That's the whole point. You're not out there doing cardio for fun. You're getting paid to compete, inspire, and yes, entertain. But it didn't stop there. The most disturbing moment came when she described seeing a father and daughter cheering in the crowd. She admitted she couldn't even hear what they were saying, yet still assumed they were either criticizing her or being lightly racist. Yes, that's the phrase she used. No evidence, no context, just a jump straight to racial motives. That assumption tells you everything you need to know. When your first instinct is to assume racism over simple crowd enthusiasm, you're not responding to the moment, you're revealing your mindset. And that's when Patrick Bet-David stepped in and said what millions were thinking. He reminded her and the world that just a short time ago, Griner was sitting in a Russian prison, facing years behind bars. She was rescued by the US government in a prisoner exchange that involved releasing an actual international arms dealer, the guy literally nicknamed the Merchant of Death. So yeah, when someone who's been saved from one of the worst situations imaginable comes back to complain about fans being too supportive, it lands differently. And PBD made sure that message was crystal clear. This wasn't just a clapback, it was a reality check. The WNBA finally has fans showing up. It finally has buzz, ratings, and packed arenas. And instead of embracing it, some of its stars are throwing shade? At some point, the league has to ask, do you want growth? Or do you just want control over who gets the credit? Because Caitlin Clark didn't take anything away from the league. She added to it. Big time. And if that's a problem, then the problem isn't her.
Brittney Griner was in a Russian prison. You would think that somebody who is now free, back in America on home soil, would not have too much to complain about. Especially something like this.
Exactly. The gravity of that trade can't be overstated. Brittney Griner didn't just come home through standard diplomatic channels. She was returned in a high-stakes international prisoner swap for none other than Victor Bout, a man convicted of conspiracy to kill US citizens, conspiracy to provide material support to terrorists, and illegal arms dealing on a global scale. This wasn't some low-level exchange. Victor Bout is a former Soviet military officer nicknamed the Merchant of Death. He armed warlords and insurgents around the world, and that's who the US had to release just to bring Griner home. So when someone who's been part of one of the most politically costly prisoner trades in recent memory turns around and complains about a loud crowd or throws out vague accusations of light racism because fans are finally packing arenas, it hits a nerve for a lot of Americans because you were rescued at an enormous price. And now you're publicly criticizing the exact momentum, the fan engagement, the noise, the cultural shift that's breathing life into your league? That's why Patrick Bet-David's comments hit so hard. He wasn't just roasting her, he was pointing out the disconnect. That Griner is being handed a platform, a second chance, and unprecedented fan support, and yet somehow that's being met with complaints instead of gratitude. So here's the truth. You can't have it both ways. You can't demand the world fight for your freedom and then grumble when the spotlight turns on. The WNBA has a shot at mainstream success for the first time in decades. And if some of its stars are uncomfortable with fans showing up and being passionate, that says more about them than it does about the crowd. Let me know. Do you think PBD went too far, or was it exactly what needed to be said?
It doesn't matter what sport you are. It doesn't matter what sport you pick. That's how fans act in every arena. In every arena. So, and then when you, clearly she's not remembering who they let out to get her back.
The Merchant of Death.
The Merchant of Death. An arms dealer that wanted to kill American citizens.
This commentary cuts to the heart of a cultural flashpoint in sports. And Patrick Bet-David's take didn't just sting because it was brutal, but because it exposed layers of uncomfortable truth. Saying that the WNBA used to be a peaceful place where you could bring your laptop and now it's too loud reveals a deep disconnect. Pro sports should be loud. The fans should be passionate. That's how leagues grow. That's how players get paid. But when Griner paints this surge in attention as something negative and suggests light racism might be driving fan reactions, it undercuts not just Caitlin Clark, but the entire fan base that's lifting the league to historic heights. Griner was imprisoned in Russia under terrifying circumstances. That she's now playing basketball again in the US, free, safe, and cheered on by tens of thousands, should be something she embraces. The fact that she's instead focused on crowd noise or coded criticism about who's cheering loudest doesn't just seem out of touch. It feels ungrateful to many Americans. And that's why PBD's point landed so hard. You were traded for an EC, arms dealer. The least you can do is embrace the crowd that's giving you a second shot. There's no denying it. Caitlin Clark has fundamentally shifted the trajectory of the WNBA. Her race may play a part in her marketability, but as PBD highlighted, it's not the whole story. Clark has shattered college records, boosted WNBA. Attendance and ratings, attracted new sponsors and media deals. Finished 4th in MVP voting as a rookie. This is a player bringing real value. And yet, instead of celebrating that rising tide, we're seeing subtle resentment from some veterans. Resentment that, when dressed up in racial implications, threatens to divide rather than unite. At its core, this isn't just about one interview. Or one player. It's about what kind of league the WNBA wants to be. One that welcomes fans, growth, and change? Or one that views excitement and new attention as a threat to its old hierarchy? If players like Griner want higher salaries, better exposure, and a bigger platform, they need to embrace what's making that possible, even if it comes in the form of a young white star from Iowa. Because the league's newfound momentum isn't a fluke, it's the result of real market forces, and Clark is at the center of that movement. Griner's remarks weren't just tone deaf. They were a PR disaster, and PBD didn't just expose the contradiction, he amplified it loudly.
WNBA says they want to get paid more. They're saying this year they're going to make $1 billion. That's what they're saying, okay? For the first time ever. Now that Caitlin Clark is hurt for 2 weeks, did you see ticket prices? Insane. Let me read you the ticket prices. After Caitlin Clark's been hurt for 2 weeks, all right? So let's go through this. Caitlin Clark absence is having an immediate impact beyond the court. According to data shared by Yahoo Sports via TickPick, prices for 2 specific Indiana Fever away games against the Chicago Sky and the Washington Mystics dropped sharply after Clark was sidelined. Before the injury, the lowest ticket available for Fever's matchup in Chicago was $86. For the game in Washington, fans needed at least $41 to get in. After the news of Clark's absence, those get-in prices fell to $25 from $86 and $14.
The ticket price data PBD shared during the podcast tells the real story about who's driving the WNBA's success. And it's not up for debate. When Clark got injured, ticket prices for Fever games plummeted immediately. Chicago tickets crashed from $86 down to $25. Washington tickets dropped from $41 to $14. These aren't minor dips, they're market collapses. This kind of crash only happens when the main attraction disappears. Griner's complaints about crowd noise sound even more absurd when you remember. For the first 24 years of the WNBA, most games were played in nearly empty arenas. Players were comfortable with that silence because there was no pressure, no expectations, and no accountability to paying fans. Clark's arrival changed everything. Suddenly, the league had real fans, energy, and excitement. And some players just weren't ready for that shift. When Griner said the old WNBA was a place you could bring your laptop and get work done, it perfectly captured why the league was irrelevant for so long. The players treated games like casual pickup runs, not professional entertainment people pay to watch. That attitude is exactly why the WNBA lost money for 25 straight years. PBD's response was sharp because he didn't let Griner hide behind victim narratives or racial grievances. He brought the conversation back to reality. Griner was rescued from international imprisonment and is now free to play basketball in the US, making more money than the WNBA has ever seen. And yet, she chooses to complain about fans being too enthusiastic. The comparison to other sports crushed Griner's argument. PBD pointed out that crowd noise and passionate fans are part of every major sport. NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL. Players in those leagues face hostile road crowds all the time. That's just part of the job. It's not a special burden that deserves extra accommodation. Griner seems to think WNBA players should get all the perks of being professional athletes. The salaries, the fame, the platform, but none of the pressure or expectations that come with entertaining paying customers. That's not how professional sports work anywhere. The Russian prison story PBD brought up was especially brutal. Here's a woman who faced real oppression, true limits on her freedom, and serious consequences. And she's using that platform to complain about Americans being excited to watch basketball. PBD also tackled the bigger resentment some WNBA players feel toward Clark's success. He acknowledged that it's natural to be frustrated when someone gets attention you feel you deserve. But he pointed out this dynamic happens in every sport whenever transcendent talents emerge. The Michael Jordan comparison hit home. Jordan faced huge resentment from rivals who thought he was getting too much credit. The Detroit Pistons even invented the Jordan rules to try and physically and mentally beat him down. But that resentment existed because Jordan's impact was undeniable, not because the media was inflating his importance.
And she wreaks havoc. She's the Rookie of the Year. She's 4th in the league in MVP voting. 4th in the league, her rookie year.
Wow.
Outstanding. She's like Steph Curry. She can pull up from anywhere. You understand? She has that kind of capability. Didn't win a national championship. Lost to LSU one year. Lost to South Carolina another year. But she's outstanding and clearly worthy of being the number 1 overall pick. And what I was saying to everybody is ride the wave. Rising tide lifts all boats. The girl is spectacular. It's not like she's not a scrub. She's not only can play, she's a star caliber player who draws this attention. And maybe it's because that fan base that she has and her being a young white lady.
With Clark, the situation is clear. The attention she receives is backed by measurable impact. Ticket sales, TV ratings, merchandise revenue, social media buzz. These aren't just opinions or media hype. They're hard financial facts proving her value to the league. Griner's complaints about racial undertones and crowd reactions are especially troubling because they assume the worst about fans who are simply excited to watch basketball. The idea that father-daughter pairs cheering at games might be racist shows a mindset looking for problems instead of seeing opportunities. The podcast exposed how unprepared some WNBA players were for mainstream success. For 25 years, they operated in a bubble with minimal criticism, low expectations, and almost no accountability. Clark's arrival changed all that, bringing real scrutiny, real pressure, and real consequences for performance. PBD's point about gratitude hit hard. When you compare Griner's experience in a Russian prison to her current complaints about American fans, it's staggering. Someone who truly understood what she endured should be celebrating every moment of freedom, every chance to compete, and every fan who spends money to watch her play. The WNBA's financial future depends on keeping the kind of fan interest Clark has sparked. If players like Griner push casual fans away with complaints about enthusiasm or accusations of racism, the league risks going back to empty arenas and money losses. The timing of Griner's comments couldn't have been worse. They came right as the WNBA was hitting its best financial numbers ever. Instead of embracing that success, she chose to focus on imagined problems instead of real benefits. Patrick Bet-David's business insight was the perfect lens here. He knows fan engagement and customer satisfaction drive revenue, which pays players' salaries. Complaining about fans being too enthusiastic is like complaining about having too much money. It shows a basic misunderstanding of how professional sports economics work. The comparison to other entertainment fields was spot on. Musicians don't complain when concerts get loud. Actors don't grumble when audiences get engaged. Professional entertainment is about creating excitement and emotional connection with paying customers. Griner's view seems to be that WNBA players should enjoy all the perks of rising popularity without any of the pressure or scrutiny that comes with mainstream attention. That's simply not how any professional sport or entertainment business works. The racial issues she raised are important, no question. But using those concerns to dodge criticism or ignore market realities only hurts everyone involved. Clark's success is about impact and results, not racial favoritism. PBD's response was balanced. He recognized the complexity of racial topics, but also held Griner accountable for tone-deaf complaints. He didn't dismiss racial concerns, but he wouldn't let them excuse ignoring the facts about fan engagement and league economics. The prisoner exchange story PBD brought up was especially powerful. The US government literally traded a convicted arms dealer to secure Griner's freedom. That level of international negotiation shows how valuable her freedom really is. And yet, her response to that freedom was to complain about crowd noise and suspect racist motives from enthusiastic fans. That's a profound lack of perspective and gratitude. Someone truly grateful would celebrate every chance to play before passionate fans. The bigger message PBD delivered was about appreciation and perspective. The WNBA fought for relevance and financial stability for 25 years. Now that it finally has real attention and growing revenue, players should embrace the opportunity, not complain about the very things fueling their success. Patrick Bet-David didn't hold back because someone needed to say what many were thinking about Griner's comments. The mix of tone deafness, ingratitude, and racial assumptions was too much to ignore, especially from someone who should understand the value of freedom and opportunity better than most. He reminded Brittney Griner that gratitude matters more than grievances. While she was whining about crowd noise and racial issues, PBD delivered the reality check she desperately needed. The Russian prison reference was brutal, but absolutely necessary. If you agree PBD was right, hit that like or button and subscribe for more unfiltered truth.